Hi there, everybody. This is Jamie, and I'm coming to you from my home office today in Warren, Ohio. And I was inspired earlier this morning to do a live cast based on a wonderful meeting discussion that we had on In the Rooms. I had the great privilege of filling in this morning for my friend Kitsuki Hawk's yoga and recovery meeting. And we decided to continue a topic that I started to explore a few weeks ago on my Wednesday night trauma and recovery meeting. And this was this whole idea of being triggered by tragedy, triggered by current events, and how that affects us as people in recovery. And I think this is something so important to be talking about and discussing because I go back to the wisdom of my first sponsor and mentor, Janet. If you've read Trauma and the 12 Steps, you know that she was a foundational figure in my life. And she always shared with me, don't feel you have to explain or justify why something or someone or some event is triggering you. But as somebody in recovery where being triggered can be a life or death matter, you simply have to be aware that you are being triggered. And then from there, come up with some type of plan of action. And this is where I really think it's important we have a conversation about news and current events and politics and tragedy and how that can affect us as people in recovery. And I am here in as neutral of a place as possible. It's not about getting into political debate, because part of the answer I really have had to revisit for myself this week is to do what something in the big book says, which is resign from the debating society, and to consider how much this attachment we may have to certain issues or certain points that even we can be justifiably passionate about, is it affecting our mental and emotional well-being, and ultimately is that affecting our recovery? So wherever you stand politically, wherever you may stand about your views, I simply ask that you approach listening to some of what I have to share here from this perspective of how will this enrich my recovery, how will this enrich my mental health, maybe taking some of these points into consideration. So I'm a pretty sensitive person. If you know me well, that's not lost on any of you. I tend to feel things very hard. I tend to have a big heart. And with that spirit is how I can get very triggered and very affected by just anything that I see news or current events wise. And something that I had to do, and this is really one of the first kind of tips I want to share, is back in 2008, I made a conscious decision to stop watching television news. Not to stop taking in news, and I'll explain a little bit about how I have reconciled that. But during the 2008 presidential election, I was following things pretty closely. I was watching various channels every night. I was so enraptured by it. And so I probably had about 6, 7 years sober at that point. And one night it just struck me, I just don't like the way I feel after watching this. Like my body was physically drained. And I took pause to consider why, and it was literally the packaging of modern TV news. Even your more neutral stations can be so sensationalist, so in your face. It was in the best, if you get the language of energy, the best I can explain is that energy was just coming at me so strong. And I said, I wonder what would happen if I just don't watch TV news for a couple months. And I noticed a marked shift in my mental health and well-being by not doing that. So I made a decision at that point to get any news that I desired to follow either in print form or online, where I can kind of choose from multiple sources, try to get an all sides view of a story by being able to look at multiple sources and to better censor what is coming at me and in what forum. And at least for me, print media has a lot less of that triggering energy than watching things on TV. And it also goes back to a piece of advice I got in earlier recovery. If you're reading something and you catch that it's overwhelming you, you simply click it off or turn it off and then maybe come back to it at a later time. And as recovering folks, we have to take care of ourselves when we notice that we're being triggered. So I guess if we're wrapping that up into a best practice, it's find out, because I don't think the answer here is necessarily avoiding all news, to put your head in a rock and not be aware of what's going on in the world, because I don't think that's a very mindful thing to do, but to exercise prudence over how you take in what you're receiving. and I want to say something, but I don't want this to come off as too politically charged, but it's on my heart and I'm going to say it. Read multiple sources, because if you stick to just one source and hold that as gospel truth, you're likely not getting the whole story. So, moving on to a second best practice that I think is a little more recovery centered, wherever you may stand in your political views or views of what's going on in the world, and that is seek support. If you were on trauma recovery books here the other day watching our live cast with Jeff Zacharias, my good friend from Chicago, I asked him, particularly as people in the LGBT community, how can we support ourselves, care for ourselves when we find ourselves really being triggered by things we see in the news and hearing very hateful things that people can be saying. And Jeff's answer was just that: seek support. Talk to people who you know get it. And I'm very grateful that in my life I have a few people in my recovery support network. And I think it just goes to say there's nothing that support doesn't help with. If it's the part of support that is healthy. To me, healthy support is support that both validates you and challenges you. So that's probably a topic for another live cast or another video. But yeah, seek support when you're in these kind of situations. So whether that be talking to people or reaching out to some of your online connections. So the third area I want to talk about is a little bit about social media. And even as I talk about this, I'm calling myself out. Consider what energetic value you're getting from engaging in comment wars. And I've struggled with this one for many, many years, because I love social media. I love Facebook. I've been on it for about 10 years. And it really has helped me to be able to connect with a lot of people globally who I may otherwise not have. I've made a lot of good real life friends now through social media connection. So I have some friends who want nothing to do with social media, see it as an evil, or has abandoned it altogether. And if that's what works for you, honor that. It was funny, the other night after I got into a bit of an online discussion with somebody that left me feeling a little weird, I talked to online, well, over email with one friend and then over the phone with another friend, two older mentors of mine. And I felt so much better after talking to both of them. And it was so much so that I wanted to go online and say, thanks to Sharon and Rick for supporting me. And then I realized they're not even on Facebook. And that's probably a good indication of why there's such healthy support for me, because they're not a part of some of this wackiness that can come about from social media. So I digress a little bit. But to get back to the point here of watching your social media life, I think it's fine to post on things you're passionate about. I certainly have to take a breath before I post something to say, do I want to really entertain the comments that can go along with a lot of this? If you're setting savvy and you may want to figure out a way to post without comments, that may be an option that you can entertain too. But I've always kind of taken the attitude, if I'm going to put something out there, because I have to do this with YouTube and blogs and a lot of other things I participate in, you're opening yourself to comments. And there's a lot of feeling out there about comments. Like, do they really encourage dialogue, or is it just letting a lot of unstable opinion and whatnot come in? And I go back and forth about that, because I've had a couple really nice conversations and have made nice connections with having comment discussions. But whenever I feel that sense rising over me of, oh my God, this is a comment war starting, I have to ask myself, is it worth this energetic engagement? And a lot of times I've had great shame, realizing just how much energy I've wasted in any given day, where I could have been writing, where I could have been meditating, where I could have been doing something else. Engaging in a comment war with somebody whose likely opinion is not going to change, and they're not going to change my opinion. So as a recovery thing, just ask yourself, is it worth it? And that's a piece of advice I learned very early on in my recovery journey, to ask yourself with any debates you get into with people on or offline, with any relationship energy that may be keeping you in a not good place. Ask yourself, is this worth it? is this worth it to engage my energy in further? And if your heart and soul and mind is telling you not, walk away. And I think that's the last point I want to get to, which cycles back to what I started with. You do not have to explain to anybody why something or someone is triggering you. I had something said to me this week, because obviously, well, I guess I'll just say both major party candidates in the U.S. are triggering me pretty significantly. But one in particular because of his opinions and beliefs about women. And somebody said to me, but it's just words. It's just words. And in my experience, nothing is ever just words. Nothing is ever just words. One of those axioms I absolutely hate is that sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. That's BS to me. Because I know some of the hardest abuses that people have endured have come because of words, because of sentiment behind those words. And if somebody is attacking you for being affected by that, you do not owe them an explanation. Going back to Janet's wisdom, you don't have to explain to anybody why something is triggering you. Just know that it is. And then when it is, come up with a plan of action. So speaking of plan of action, what I'd like to wrap this little live cast with is something we talked about on the meeting today, which is using our meditation, our yoga, our dance, our exercise practices as a way to just work it out. I'm not a big Grey's Anatomy person, but I know that hashtag and that idea, dance it out from Grey's Anatomy, that's a big part of what we really believe in Dancing Mindfulness, that whatever is coming up for you emotionally, you can entertain it by dancing with it. And then through doing that non-judgmentally, the hope is that you come out feeling better on the other side, or at least coming to a more proactive solution that you can implement on the other side. And in the meeting today, we talked a lot about our yoga practices and our meditation practices and how that can help. In 2016, more than any other time in my yoga practice, I've been using the loving kindness meditation. It's one of the only ways I can really help myself make sense of the world. And in the next few days on one of the business pages here, I think I'm going to do a live cast leading through the loving kindness verses and how we can apply that to how we're being affected by what's going on in the world. But on the meeting today, I shared from Nikolai Bachman, who is one of my preferred writers of yoga philosophy to a Western audience. And his book, The Path of the Yoga Sutras, is one of my favorites. And listen to what he shared about yoga, because I shared from his chapter on yoga as a practice for quieting the heart-mind. And for those of you who know anything about trauma, the heart-mind is really what it is essentially we call the limbic brain. It's that brain that gets easily activated, easily triggered, easily set into this fight-flight response because it's so tied with emotion and memory and all of that. And Nikolai shares, yoga is both the process of quieting and the state of quiescence. Consciously tuning out any distracting noise around us and turning our attention inward nurtures our heart and mind. Slowing down and connecting with our silent inner light of awareness relieves us from the hustle and bustle of the world. And I needed that reminder this morning because it is my human tendency to want to be drawn into debate. But for me, that's a lot about my fight-flight system getting activated. And rarely has that debate led to a place of proactive action where I can sit and quiet and breathe and then actually do something to help bring about some change in the world. And I think it ultimately goes to that energy that I may spend fighting with people, could that be better spent on actually bringing about some kind of small change in my life, in my career, in my interactions with my family and friends in my community? So thank you for those of you who may have been able to pop in live. We'll certainly reshare this on Trauma Recovery on my main page, and then we'll hopefully try to get this up on YouTube and maybe link it to an article that we can share, because we must talk about how current events affects us as people on a recovering path, because at least for me, I don't know what it's like for you, but staying sober and staying sane is a life and death matter. So Thank you very much. Have a pleasant rest of your day, or as pleasant as possible, wherever you may be.